Welcome. I'm David Phillips, the CEO of Estate Planning Specialist, and I'm really glad to talk to you today. This really is a message of urgency. I kind of feel like Paul Revere, when he went through the villages announcing that the British were coming. Now, the British aren't coming, they're already here, but we have some certain things that have taken place in reference to our tax laws that you and I need to be prepared for. And now is the time for us to do that preparation. We can't wait until after the fact. We have to actually do the preparation now. There are some possibilities that the changes that President Biden and Kamala Harris announced during the campaign will not take place. But with Congress on their side, and with them as in control at the helm of the presidency, it's pretty much an assurity that we're going to see some significant changes, specifically changes to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of President Trump. So what kind of changes do we expect? There are 6 basic areas that I think we need to be aware of. First of all, we've all heard about the personal income tax changes. And then we're going to talk about the capital gains tax changes, the inherited IRA changes, and most of those have actually already occurred, but you need to be aware of what's going to go on there. The federal estate tax, there's going to be some changes, significant changes there. I predict those will occur. And then we have the lifetime gift tax exclusion change. Most of you are not aware of that. You haven't heard about this one, and this is a biggie. So we're going to cover that today. And then finally, we're going to talk about the step up in basis and the potential loss of that amazing benefit that we have as far as estate planning is concerned. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the personal income tax and what the changes supposedly are going to be. Well, first of all, we know that President Biden said that he really is going to go after anybody that makes over $400,000. He's going to go after the big tax wage earners. And so as a result of that, what is he going to do? Well, first of all, the tax brackets really aren't going to change that much from what President Trump had in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. They're going to remain really close to the same, with the exception the highest bracket's 39%. But if you make over $400,000, he pledges that he's going to add a 12.4% Social Security tax that's going to go on top of that. So that brings your bracket way beyond 50%. And that's key. That's key for you to do some planning now. And how can you do some planning? Well, first of all, make sure you don't go past the top bracket that I call the income harvest bracket of $329,000. And there's several ways that you can keep your income down. You can put more contributions into your defined benefit plans if you have the ability to do so. But the key thing is you want to take advantage of this, we call income harvesting, and make sure you stay within that, because at the $329,000 level right now, the highest the bracket is 24%. So you really want to take advantage of that. The second thing that you want to do is, if you don't have that kind of income, so let's just say my income is $200,000, and I can't get up to the 329. Well, because we're at the lowest tax brackets we have been for 80 years, you need to take advantage of it. And you need to take money out of your IRA and put it into a Roth. Sure, it's going to expose that Roth conversion to taxes, but it's the lowest brackets we've been in 80 years, so you need to take advantage of that. So those are the key things. Bring your income down if you can with defined benefit plans, defined contributions, and an income harvest if you're not up to that level. The 329 is kind of the key that you want to shoot at. So now let's focus on capital gains tax. Capital gains tax really has kind of been at a pretty sweet spot, I feel, for the last several years. And I really don't think that President Biden intends to change that too much unless you make over $400,000. So if you're a big capital gains guy with your real estate investments, or you intend to sell something like a farm or a business or whatever, anything over $400,000 is going to get whacked pretty hard, and they're going to increase that tax liability. So you need to prepare for that. One of the ways you can do that is you can set up what's called the charitable remainder trust and transfer your asset into that charitable remainder trust through your donor advised fund, which I really recommend that you do, and set one of those up. There's a great group that we work with called Legacy Global Foundation. We really like the way they approach this. And you transfer the asset in there before you sell it, and then you end up with all of the proceeds from it that you can invest. No capital gains tax at all is ever paid, and you get income for the rest of your life, and you get a superb tax deduction. So charitable remainder trust, if you've got a big asset that you're going to sell, you want to make sure that you give us a call and talk to us before you make that transaction, because there's a way to avoid the capital gains tax period on that. Now the next area is in reference to our qualified accounts. What's a qualified account? Well, it's like an IRA, a 401k, a 403b. It's money that you set aside from your income, and you set aside for your retirement. And it's earning interest right now. It's all tax deferred. But when you touch that money, when you take it out, and when your heirs take it out, there are taxes to be paid. It has to be. You have to pay the taxes someday. Well, this particular movement actually occurred prior to President Biden's election, and it's called the Secure Act. And it has walloped the daylights out of your children's inheritance. The money that you've set aside, maybe you're not able to spend all of your IRA before you pass away, and it ends up going to the next generation. So right now, the village has been pillaged. Your children have been robbed of one of their greatest assets that you can pass to them. And this happened actually last January, when the Secure Act was passed. And it's made big changes on the way we approach the IRA monies that we have for our kids. The main impact that the Secure Act had on our children's inheritance is the fact that the stretch is dead. So the stretch IRA is no longer with us. And what does that mean? That means that now we have what's called the 10-year rule in place. And the 10-year rule simply means that an IRA has to be distributed to a non-spousal beneficiary within 10 years after the passing of the grantor or the benefactor. And that all that IRA has to be out. Therefore, it all has to be taxed to the beneficiary, which again is our children. So that's really where the Secure Act had its impact. And hoarding your IRA really is not a good idea anymore. You need to actually spend that money. Use that money first. That should be the first money that you use for your income. And use other money from other investments, because the worst asset that you can pass to your children is your IRA because of this tax, the tax that they're going to eventually have to pay. And there's no way around it if you intend to leave your IRA to your children. And some people can plan their departure from this earth. Some people can't. Some people don't get a chance to, as we know from our COVID experience recently. A lot of people that I know didn't think that COVID was going to take them down, and it did. And so you don't really know the time, the day, and the hour. So you need to prepare for this. And as a result, one of the things that you can do is you can do what's called a Roth conversion. We already talked about it a little bit in the video clip, but the Roth conversion is really a smart thing, because if you pass it to your kids and you pay the tax now at the lowest tax brackets we've been in 80 years, and then they inherit that IRA, guess what? No taxes to them. At least that's the way the law stands right now. There's no taxes to them. Now, they do have to take a distribution. That's the law. But they don't have to pay taxes on it because you already paid the taxes on the Roth conversion. But if I convert a Roth and I pass that Roth to my child, how much is it worth? The Roth is only worth what a Roth is worth. And so I've found the holy grail to Roth conversions. I'm going to share that with you in a second. So what is the Holy Grail? What's the perfect conversion tool versus a Roth? I love Roths, believe me, and we have a lot of clients that we help convert their IRAs to Roths. But there is the perfect conversion is explained in this book, The Bombshell Battle Plan. And I'm going to tell you a little bit later on how each of you can get a copy of this special report that I rewrote specifically to reflect the new tax law changes that I see forthcoming. And actually the laws that reflect the Secure Act are in there as well. So all of this is in the report, The Bombshell Battle Plan, that you're able to receive. In the report, there are 6 strategies that you can implement that will increase the value of your IRA, specifically your Roth IRA, because you're going to convert the Roth IRA. And remember, a Roth is only worth what a Roth is worth. And so the 6 strategies that you can use are, and that I explain in the Bombshell Battle Plan, are the RMD leverage strategy, the wealth creation strategy, the family bank strategy, the Roth on Roid strategy, the IRA reboot strategy, and the twist of charity with an IRA strategy. So those are 6 strategies that are explained in the Bombshell Battle Plan that you will be able to choose one of those or a couple of them and use them to implement to increase the value of your IRA. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to nullify the Secure Act. The Secure Act will mean nothing to your family. You've replaced what they have taken from you. The next area that we want to talk about is federal estate tax. And this topic seems to be a moving target. In my 49 years of estate planning, I've seen it go as low as, the exclusion go as low as $60,000 to now as high as $11.7 million. That's almost $12 million, from $60,000 to $12 million. And obviously it's as high as it's ever been. But there is one of the things that Biden made clear in his campaign, that he wants to get the estate tax exclusion back down to normal levels. So when he was pressed, what is a normal level? What does that mean? He came out with $3.5 million. So it would go from 12 to 3.5. Now, it may not end up at 3.5, it may end up at 5, but we know for a fact that if we just let things go the way they are, in 2026, they're going to drop back down to 6 million because that's part of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, and it has what's called a sunset provision that'll drop back to where it was before that law was enacted. So what does that really mean? How does that impact me today? How can I combat that? Well, first of all, you need to make some serious gifts now and do some gifting while you can and transfer assets out of your estate if that's going to be a problem, and get your estate down to a level that you feel comfortable that you're not going to have an estate tax. Because right now, to transfer assets from one generation to the next, it's at 40% tax. Biden has promised that he's going to increase that to 45%. I don't think so. I think it's going to be closer to 50%. And so that means that everything above the exclusion that you transfer to your kids, whether you choose the time or not, I mean, we don't know the day and an hour that we're going to leave, there's going to be a serious tax consequence. There's going to be a day of reckoning, and that's the day when you pass away. And there's going to be income taxes on that IRA, and there's going to be the estate taxes if you're over the exclusion. Right now, the exclusion at 11.7, it only affects 1,500 Americans that pass away in the year. That's nobody. But you bring it down to, or that's very few people, you bring it down to 3.5. Now you've got a bigger audience. You have more that's going to impact. So there are several strategies that I want to talk to you about that you can implement. And most of them have to do with wealth creation, creating wealth tax-free so that the kids can use that money to pay the taxes, regardless of what happens to the income taxes, regardless of what happens to the estate taxes, regardless of what happens to your income if you do well or not, regardless of how much you spend, you're still going to leave an inheritance tax-free to your kids. And that's called the wealth creation strategy. We're going to talk more about that here in a second. Well, no one really is excited about Biden implementing this change in the federal estate tax exclusion credit. I don't really know anybody that's excited about it. I mean, we've been used to this high exclusion, and frankly, that might be a little high, but we've been used to 5 million, 6 million for a long time, and we as planners have gotten used to that. To bring it back down to 3.5 million would be an enormous change for us and for the public in large, because there are a lot of people that it will impact. I've written a report, an update, a fourth edition of my report, Disinherit the IRS. And I don't mean, if there's an IRS agent out there watching this, I don't mean that IRS isn't going to get their due. They're going to get their due if you have an estate that's, whatever the exclusion is, that requires an estate tax, they're going to get their due. But I can show you in this report strategies that you can implement so that you get to keep the wealth in the family. The IRS gets their due, but you get to keep the wealth in the family. And that's our goal. That's what we want to do. So whatever the IRS is due, they will get it, but your estate will not be impacted. And I think that's the key. That's what we want to do. I think everybody walks away from that game pretty happy. You live a life. You spend as much as you want to. If the market does poorly, your kids still get an inheritance. If you spend all the money, your kids still get an inheritance. And if the IRA tax the heck out of you because the credit goes down to $3.5 million, your family still gets the inheritance. So that's the whole idea. Our goal as estate planning specialists for almost 50 years is to keep the wealth in the family. That's what our goal has been. And we haven't changed that from day one, and we're not going to change that. And that's really what you're going to read about in Disinherit the IRS. So I want you, there's the two reports, the Bombshell Battle Plan and Disinherit the IRS. They're going to be available to you. We'll show you how they're going to be available shortly after when we get done here today. So the next area we want to talk about is an area that I believe has not really been focused on. And this is kind of my Paul Revere exclamation. Right now, we can gift to our kids. Right now, while we're alive, we can gift to our kids the same amount that we could pass to them when we pass away. So what is that? It's $11.7 million. So there's parity with the gift tax and the estate tax right now. And this has been since 2010. So whatever the exclusion, the federal estate tax exclusion has been, it's gone up and down. The gift tax, the lifetime gift tax exclusion has actually matched it. So if I have $11.7 million and I got one son, Todd, let's just say Todd's my only kid, and I want to give him that $11.7 million while I'm alive and see the joy and happiness that it gives him, I could actually do that right now. Well, President Biden has pretty much sworn that he wants to reduce that exclusion back to where it was prior to 2010, and that not create parity with the two. So whatever the exclusion, let's say the federal exclusion is at 3.5 or 5 or whatever, the lifetime gift exclusion would drop to $1 million. That's what it was before. And I firmly believe that is going to happen, and we're going to see that take place. Well, that's a big deal changer, especially for those of us that have a business, those of us that have a farm, a ranch, that we want our kids to inherit. To me, that's a big deal. And if we allow them to inherit it, then possibly they'll get the next item we're going to talk about, which is a step up in basis, but possibly not. So what strategy could we implement to kind of make sure to take advantage of the 11.7 now? Well, really what you have to do is you have to gift now while the availability is there, while it's still there. And then what you have to do is after you make that gift, you got to get on your knees and you got to pray that they don't retro it back to January 1st of 2021 to this year. You got to pray that they make it effective the day that they pass the new law. Because right now the law is it's equal, parity, and they're going to change it so that it's going to drop down to $1 million, which is still a lot that you're going to transfer to your kids, but it's not 11.7. and especially if you have a big business. So you need to, there's a call to action on this one, is to give me a call. And call me as soon as you can and say, I've got this property, I've got this business, I've got this or that, and I want my kids to have it someday. My kids are working in the business with me, and I want them, because there's a way in which you can transfer the asset to your kids, still retain control, and still get income from it, same income you were before, and give them the asset. So if that's something that you want to do, we need to talk. Now you got to beware of the basis. So what is my basis? Which brings us up to our next potential loss. So we're up to 6 now, and this is the 6th one. The loss and the step up in basis. So what is a step up in basis? Well, I think most of us know this, but just as a refresher, if I have an asset that I bought for $100,000, so let's say it's Microsoft stock, or it's some farmland, whatever, and I bought that at $100,000. And today it's worth $1 million. My increase is $900,000. So if I sell that asset, what do? I pay capital gains tax in that. Well, if I transfer that asset when I pass away, my kids get a step up in basis. So they end up receiving the full $1 million asset. And if they sell it the next day after I pass away, they don't pay capital gains tax. Now, of course, they would pay estate tax if the exclusion was low enough, but at $11.7 million, they're probably not going to pay any estate tax. So they would actually receive the entire asset, the Microsoft stock, and tax-free. Capital gains tax-free, income tax-free, estate tax-free, gift tax-free, everything tax-free, especially if everything stays the way it is right now. So the key to all of this is to make some moves now before everything's changed. And the loss in the stepped up in basis could be very, very significant. And one of the ways that you can fight this is to establish what's called a wealth creation strategy. So the question is, well, how do I fight all of this? How do I fight all of the loss and step up? I mean, there's not a whole lot we can do. We can write to our congressman and say, don't do that. That's a bad move. But you know, this machine's it's moving now, and it's going to be very, very hard to stop. But you can do something individually. I've already given you some tips on the Secure Act and how to stop that with the Bombshell Battle Plan report. And I also have several of them in the Disinherit, the IRS report. But the one key strategy that you can implement to help thwart all of this is the wealth creation strategy. You can take pennies today and create dollars for tomorrow. No matter what day that happens, you can take pennies today and create guaranteed dollars for tomorrow. And I explain all that in Disinherit the IRS and how you can do that. So I encourage you to take some affirmative action and go to the website that's on the page here and order these reports, get the reports. And if you've already ordered them, if you've already received them, make sure you read them and then implement them. Implement those strategies that I've laid out there, because that really is the only sure way in which we can individually fight this battle. I mean, there's some battles we can fight, and we can picket, and we can yell and scream, but the one thing that I know for a fact is that you can fight your own battle and win this battle. You know, I know that the key strategy to all of this is to plan for the worst and pray for the best. Thanks. Have a good day.